Test, test, test. Hopefully we're coming in loud and clear. And we're going to be doing a reaction to a John Strassel video here about Mamdani, the new Democratic, potentially the mayor of New York, who is a socialist and is looking towards pushing further government expansion. And I wanted to take my time and go over this video because I'm sick or tired of this perspective from Democrats and Republicans that they don't realize they're working towards the same goal. And this is what I'm gonna go over. So if you're interested in that type of thing, welcome to this video. And if not, if you're not interested in it, it is what it is. I guess I won't see you in this video, but I wanted to react because this is a very important issue for especially Gen Z and the younger generations, because people don't realize the consequences that this generation is truly facing when it comes to a debt-ridden nation that we currently are. And I wanted, if you do have time, please listen, give me your thoughts on it, and let's see if more people are open to the ideas that I have. So let's get into it.
I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
Zohran Mamdani will probably be my next mayor. He's popular.
Winning more primary votes than any mayoral candidate in New York City history.
People like him because he's good-looking, charismatic.
Chop, chop, chop it up. Chop, 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 chop it up.
The media can't get enough of him.
And joining me now is Zohran Mamdani.
They also like him because he's
A proud democratic socialist.
And this is the issue that most Republicans and Democrats go into. They believe that this world is based on a structure of socialist versus conservative, or socialist versus capitalist, right? And that's the world perception that we're given since we're born. Everyone in Gen Z, that's all they hear. They hear all these social issues and all these issues that are really irrelevant to the big picture, but they focus on these issues in order to distract the main population from really realizing why they're struggling. And I'll go over it and I'll kind of explain to you briefly. I can't get into it too much, and I don't know how much of it I'll get into, but I'll get into enough that hopefully it'll be a coverage of a base level understanding of our social economic situation and socioeconomic situation, not social, sorry about that. But hopefully I can explain, open some eyes, and make people from my generation who don't pay attention to politics and often are separated from it because there's no benefit for them to be involved, really. And as we see these leaders get elected, they always go against our interests. So I wanted to make this video just kind of as a plea to our generation, and hopefully people will understand a little bit better. The issues are never democratic or socialist. That is a veil that they put in front of us. That way we can't see the true issues when it really comes down to our United States tax code and how people are destroyed from competing against major corporations, and how those corporations are incentivized by the government and paid by the government. So I'll go over these issues. I'll go over housing. I'll go over all these issues. Hopefully this video will cover some of it, but I'll go from there. And of course, this guy's probably going to blame this generation as being an entitled generation, when statistically, if you make $50,000 as a Gen Z, $48,000 of it will probably go into things that you have to pay for. For example, let's say I make $50,000, I get about $10,000 of it goes to taxes. I get about 10,000 of it goes to taxes for social. 7,000 of it probably goes for Medicare or healthcare if you can afford it. Otherwise, you won't have any healthcare. And then most of it will go into your car, into housing. You're talking about $12,000 to $20,000 of your income will go directly into your housing, because housing has become so unaffordable. And a lot of people think that the solution is going to be like I can't pronounce this dude's name, but the issue is they push these politicians who say that the solution to it is further government housing expansion, and that's how people get out of poverty. But people don't understand what people who qualify for these programs have to be, that they have to meet a certain amount of being under $21,000 of income, yet they cannot save. If they save a certain amount of money, they will lose their benefits, such as SNAP benefits and everything like that. So there is no mobility for those not lower class, but people with lower income that are on those programs. There is no incentive for them to move up in a financial status. This is designed to make people separated from the issue that are truly important, from people that are low income earners, $21,000 and below, and people that are earners, middle income earners, such as people between $30,000 to $80,000. They all are in the same socioeconomic class. They really are. And people, I'll explain it later. We'll go on here.
A democratic socialist like AOC.
I am here loud and proud to rank Zohran Mamdani #1 for mayor of New York City.
They and most of the media have something in common.
Do you like capitalism?
No, I have many critiques of capitalism.
I don't usually cover local politics, but I'll make an exception for Mamdani because what he believes is what so many privileged young people believe. And these socialist ideas are just stupid.
Of course it is stupid young people. It's always stupid young people when this is the world they grew up in. This is the world they see. They get robbed. And you get conservatives that bash on it, and you get socialists that are against capitalism, but they don't realize the true issues. Everyone's missing the point. And I want to see where he goes with this.
In this video and the next, we'll look at why socialist policies always backfire.
Socialism. Terrifying word.
Mamdani mocks those who fear socialism. He says democratic socialism just means
The commitment to dignity, a state that provides whatever is necessary for its people to live a dignified life.
Socialism just further expands on the government control and government manipulation of the markets. Socialism is not the way to answer our economic issues and our generational issues. I'll go over that in a bit.
that sounds nice, but a dignified life is not what socialism brings. Mamdani was more honest about that before he ran for mayor.
The end goal of seizing the means of production.
Seizing the means of production. That means government controls most everything. To house poor people, government should take over apartment buildings.
Whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
It's really not. Like I said, our government has designed the SNAP benefits. It has designed a Section 8 housing in such a way that you are based on income household. You're measured on. This is why people stay in these programs. This is why urban cities and everything like that, people aren't incentivized to move away, is because they are provided these benefits such as housing and snaps. Now, this isn't for me to say, oh, these people are evil or anything like that. They're doing this to be lazy. It's not, because all they're doing is taking advantage of a government that really created this program for them, right? And what people don't understand is they cannot earn more income than a certain amount. Otherwise, they will lose these benefits. And what happens in this situation is, for example, you have somebody that makes $50,000 a year. They have to pay for SNAP. I mean, they get taxed for SNAP. They get taxed for medical. They get taxed for income, housing, property, rent. So these are the major things. And you talk about vehicles, you talk about if you have a vehicle, you have insurance. And people are like, well, don't have a vehicle, just live in the city. Cities are significantly more expensive to live in than rural areas. And if you move to the rural areas, in order to keep a job, you often have to have a good means of transportation. And guess what? You have insurance companies who are mandated by the government. This is a tax. People conflate. People think that insurance is just a voluntary system when it is not, because if I drive on my vehicle without a proper insurance, I will get fined and go to jail. This is a government tax. And if you look at who created most of these insurance companies, you look at Geico. Do you know what the G in Geico stands? It stands for governmental. Most of these, the General is also a government-ran insurance company. This is socialism. That's what people don't understand. We have a thing called corporate socialism. You talk about our banks. Should the banks go under, what happens? The government bails out with what? Taxpayer money. What is that? That is a socialist style benefit. It means, and it also gives government control of that said sector. For example, you look at our auto industry. It is solely controlled by our government. We use tariffs, we use these things. We're not a free market economy. We are pick and choose who the winners are economy, and we are not. It's all government control. Moving on.
But abolition of private property has been tried.
¿Y este edificio?
Es un edificio que tiene comercio privado de joyería.
Expropiese. Expropiese.
Everywhere it's been tried, government ownership wrecks lives. Here's what grocery stores sometimes look like in socialist Venezuela. Yet Mamdani says,
I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging.
And that's also an issue. If you push socialism into, all it does is gives government more money and more control of the means of production. And that is an issue. And this is the issue between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans are so pro-corporations that they will bail out anybody. They incentivize companies, and they give, look at our, for example, look at our medical and look at how Medicare and how the major hospitals or anything, they're mostly government funded. They are often ran by the government. They are owned by the government in a way as far as what they're able to do. And should you not follow certain things, the government will shut them down. So, for example, we as a whole probably pay, if I was to have health insurance, which I don't, because I'm one of the people that, well, I can't afford it. If we didn't pay it, the amount of money we spend on Medicare and everything like that, also a government mandated program, they give grants, they give what do you call it? Essentially grants. They give money to the hospitals or anything like that. They are subsidized by the government. So you are already in a social medical welfare system. But the problem is that people do not get the benefit of the free socialist system. So you can say that, oh, socialism is bad because the government then controls the whole Medicare industry, while not realizing that's what essentially we are doing it. We're just giving it to people who privately own these hospitals.
These stores will operate without a profit motive and will pass on those savings to you.
No profit motive. That appeals to people. But the profit motive is exactly what keeps stores stocked, and why we spend much less on food than we did 100 years ago, and why we have more options.
Hundreds of sales every week.
And that's all it is. They're like, well, it's a good thing because look at all the options we have. How do we get this? Do we produce the food that we do in our, do we grow this food in our country? No, we do not. Most of this production comes from exports to the United States. Government taxes those exports. They make money on it. Because they make money on it, we get a higher bill and our prices increase. But do you know why those companies move to countries like Mexico and everything like that? It's because it's simply cheaper. They don't have the same labor laws. They do not have to follow the same guidelines as they do in the United States. So they make a bigger profit margin. So because of those two combination of things, you cannot, it just makes things, groceries, prices, everything skyrocket. And because we do not produce individually as a nation, we are not the main producer of our goods. We are not able to get that money that we spend in our groceries back into our local economies, making our local economies poorer.
We have choices because capitalists must compete to get your dollars.
They do not. You look at industries like Walmart and everything like that, they have received massive government subsidies and massive government grants in order for them to exist. They also get massive tax breaks. With those tax breaks, they're able to save most of their profits and use that profit in order to further expand. This does not mean that this creates a free society or a free capitalist society. If the government chooses who they give the bailouts to, if they choose that, hey, this company is too big to fail, that is what socialism is. This is base level socialism. I don't understand how people can't understand that or get that around their heads, because it is not a concept that is foreign. The problem is our media does not portray it the way it should be portrayed, and people are misguided as far as what their beliefs are, as far as how the government subsidizes business.
Compare your experience at your profit-seeking grocery store to
dysfunction at the DMV.
Government services bring tedious bureaucracy.
People say hours-long waits have been greeting them at the doors.
I don't want my grocery store run like that.
And they'll always point out to all these poor South American nations, a lot of them, they'll blame it on those socialist nations, when people don't realize that those nations were also embargoed by the United States government because they were not part of the Western market. So what happens is, in that case, like say, let's take Cuba for example, in the 1960s, because they became socialist with Che Guevara. I think that's the revolution. I think it was Che. It might not be. I might be wrong. I could be confusing Fidel and Che. It's fine. I'm not a socialist, so I don't study those people too much. But I understand the economic sanctions that were placed on those nations. So you have to understand that if a country doesn't align with Western principles, and they align with socialist government, United States will embargo those nations and not be able to let them compete in the market with the West, therefore creating a non-competitive market against those countries. So those countries, obviously their production is going to go down. Obviously there's going to be more self-reliant people, and they'll show, look at their superstores, look how empty they are, not realizing that most of this is a direct cost of the United States and its policy towards foreign markets that are not in the same market with the United States.
Shelves are empty at an East Kansas City grocery store that's gotten millions of dollars from taxpayers.
Cities have tried.
And that's the thing. This superstore, for example, was subsidized millions and millions of dollars by the United States government, right? If you are in a free market society, then they're not competing at all. They're just getting government grants in order to exist. For me, as a human being, I am not subsidized by the US government in order for me to survive, right? Whereas these corporations, for example, they get business tax, they get, business cost taxes that they can write off. They can write off their losses. They can write off whenever they didn't make a profit, and then they get bailed out by the government. That is socialism.
Subsidizing groceries, but the results aren't pretty.
A rotten smell comes through the door, and anywhere you turn, you'll see products that need to be restocked.
I watch people walk in and walk out.
Yet Mamdani promises
city-owned grocery stores with guaranteed lower prices.
Even if Mamdani's stores work better, they'll cost tax dollars and take customers from businesses that pay taxes.
How are you going to try to come in and disrupt our livelihood?
Mamdani doesn't discuss how subsidies destroy private tax-paying competition.
Private tax-paying competition, that is an amazing oxymoron, because they literally pay probably less than % tax because they are business. So if I was, for example, able to keep 90% of my take-home check, I would be able to actually live. But the fact is, the cost of living, due to these corporations, due to these companies that are subsidized by the government, I cannot afford to compete with them. They simply make more money. And what are their, if they break antitrust laws, what are their fees? Well, they get $200 million fee. People not realizing that they've already made $1 billion profit on that $200 fee. Therefore, it's not even a tax. Money to them doesn't matter. They run on debt and they run on the markets. So what they do is they essentially buy land, they control the markets, and they just manipulate anything to make it non-competitive. For example, why does Bill Gates buy so much farmland in the United States? Well, he's heavily invested into a company called Tyson Foods. And what happens with that? Well, Tyson Foods produces meat. Their main competitions before 1980s were small markets, small farms and everything like that. But what happened? Well, we input in EPA laws. We made things so expensive for farmers to produce their own food that they're not able to compete with these massive corporations. So what happened? Well, they had to shut down. And guess what happened to those farms and anything like that? Well, they got bought out by billionaires. Now, another thing that the way it works is Bill Gates, because he's heavily invested in Tyson Foods, he makes money. So what is his incentive to produce farm animals or anything like that, produce on his own? There is none. He gets all the money from Tyson, and because he does that, what happens is anytime Tyson Foods gains control of a market, Bill Gates benefits massively. And this is kind of the antitrust laws that should have been in place, but that they broke because of things like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. They were able to send their money through these major corporations, and they're able to essentially control markets through those corporations by buying off those property, buying off those lands. They're all connected to the same company. All the Fortune 500 companies have most of their stock, up to 40%, invested by these three major corporations who are owned and invested heavily into each other. So this creates a market to where we cannot compete. All the government grants go to their own businesses, whether it's a small or whether it's a front business. That's a small portion owned by Bill Gates, for example. They make money regardless. All they're doing currently is destabilizing the competition, making small markets disappear. Look at any small town that's become a Walmart town. This is by design, and it is by the government overexpanding its reach and implementing these EPA laws and implementing all these laws that make it seem like it's a good idea because they're using environmental factors as the main thing, when we've gotten dirty as a world because these major corporations, all they do is they send their work over to China. They send all their not food production, but they send it to Mexico. But what people don't realize is these companies are heavily invested in foreign markets like China. So for example, let's say you have Nike. Nike doesn't want to make shoes in the United States. Why? Well, you have to pay your workers a living wage. You have to pay, you have to make sure that you're up to standard as far as your environmental laws and everything like that. So you have to stay within certain programs. So what do? Well, they send it overseas. Those productions, those people, they take control of that market. What happens when this market comes, when these goods come back from the China? Well, we have tariffs on them. So United States government already benefits from it. So it's a benefit system that creates more and more money for the government. We are designed to give more and more and more of our income to the government while they take away our wealth.
He just says socialism helps everyone by taking from the ultra rich.
Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires.
Mamdani says he'll fund his handouts by taxing the rich. But
and of course they're gonna say that, well, the rich, they're taxpayers. They're what they're gonna do is they're gonna leave the nation, and they're just big companies. They need to exist within the United States. We used to be a very, very small privately owned companies in the United States, and we were functioning in 1950s, 60s perfectly fine without major corporations pretty much lobbying themselves into government grants and government subsidies in order to eliminate their entire competition. We are not a capitalist nation. If we were a free market society, we would not be given grants to the banking system like we did in 2008, to where in return, because they failed the system, because they gave out all these loans that were unaffordable and everything like that, it created there's a reason why they gave these people those loans. So what happened essentially was they gave all these people loans at a high interest rate, knowing that in future they could not afford it. They will take all the money from those people that tried to afford their mortgage, and the economy crashed. When the economy tanked, those people were forced into a mass sale of homes. So when those people were forced into mass sale of homes, the corporations themselves, who didn't have much market competition in the residential areas, took control of those areas. You talk about some cities like Phoenix, their housing market, single home family units were essentially bought out by one company, essentially creating a monopoly in Phoenix. And people are like, well, they only own 9% of the houses, 10% of the houses. That's not the point. The point is they focused on those cities, right? They focused on urban cities to where because they controlled so much of urban city land and so much of the property that was in urban cities and just general surrounding areas, the suburbs and everything like that, it created a wide increase in property value. That's why we're paying so much for housing. Paying 400. The average cost of a home in the United States is currently $450,000. Now you may think, well, that's just capitalism, right? That's what the corporations do. Well, we bailed them out. We bailed out these banks, and they used that money in return to gain that market. What does that cause? What's the cause of effect of that? Well, housing got expensive. Well, why does the government benefit from it? Because residential property taxes is how they make their revenue. So the government is a revenue system, and then they implement all these other laws that just create more and more backtrack. It's literally just designed to take away money from the taxpayer. People like Joel here, they defend this practice because they think that's capitalism. They widely benefit from it. They are controlled mouth. They are controlled opposition. That is what is controlled opposition.
Wealth taxes never bring in what's promised.
People don't work to pay taxes.
Economist Art Laffer famously pointed out that at a certain level, higher taxes stop bringing in more money. Because
okay, that's a very, very good point right here. So check it out. So we have from 0 to 100, well, 0 to 100% tax rate, right? And this, after 50%, it becomes prohibitive, right? That's what they're saying. So how come the corporations aren't currently paying 49% taxes while gaining, that's literally, they're still profitable at 49. Why aren't they paying 35% tax? Most corporations pay under 10% as far as what their tax, as far as on their revenue. And most of it, the losses, they pay it, they write it off, right? So you don't have to be profitable as a business. If you have losses, you can just literally write it off and you can continue to exist. Are people allowed to be like that? Well, no, because we have to buy our food, we have to buy our water. We cannot write off things like our gas expenses. We cannot write off our food expenses. These are things that are cost for us to exist. We are in itself we gain less benefit from the government than the corporations do, and that's what people don't focus on. They focus on these things that are social issues. They focus on LGBTQ is destroying this, or the minorities, or the issues is caused by all these people on welfare. They are not a cause. They are a symptom of what this society has become and the government dependency that they create, because they intentionally create it in order to control markets. We're tough. We're in a tough situation.
Taxes stop bringing in more money because rich people work hard to escape high taxes.
Yes, they do.
They'll change where they earn their income. They'll change how they earn their income. They'll change how much they earn, when they receive the income. They'll change all of those things.
Oh, boo-hoo, a billionaire is gonna leave. Do you realize that this billionaire, if they try to do that, they cannot exist in the market of United States? So you say if these people, because we're gonna raise taxes on them, for example, if we make businesses pay as much as, you know, the average citizen does in taxes, and we don't give them the benefits of writing off their cost of expenses or anything like that, you do realize what would happen is it would just create a competitive marketplace. More people in the United States would be able to afford to compete with big corporations. There isn't going to be as wide of a gap between what the average person, they can afford a house. But the society and the current business practices that we're in, they're all getting lobbied. All the major business contracts and all of these major corporations, they lobby directly to the government. They spend billions of dollars every year on it just to get government benefits, to implement EPA laws, to implement all these laws that are going to keep the small people from competing against them. And it creates a market control, a market dependency. There was a reason why Walmart was so cheap back in the day, is because those companies did not control the market. But now they control 20-30% of the market, meaning they no longer have to compete. They can just shut down and buy out their competition. People sold out, and people blame this on the boomers and everything like that. That's not a boomer issue. It's never been a boomer issue. In 1970s, laws were passed to make things anti-competitive. The things that changed how our society isn't the boomers because they voted in a certain way, because honestly their vote didn't matter. Boomers voted for JFK and he got shot in the head in front of their televisions. Everybody was watching it. You do understand that. How do you think boomers felt after they saw JFK get shot? They no longer were competitive. They no longer cared about policies because they just saw someone who was going to bring this change to them just get shot. And then guess what happens? Well, you got after JFK, they started implementing all these laws in 68 and 71 that just they created a society that cannot compete. They created anti-competition laws. They made big business pretty much become the megalith that it became. And we as Gen Z, I'm not Gen Z, I'm millennial. I'm on the last year of millennial group. I was born in 96, so I don't qualify. But however, I grew up in watching the 2008 housing market crash. I grew up seeing the expansion of social media, which created a boom for my generation as far as their wealth, but it did not create enough wealth for it to go around. Only certain people became wealthy. Then what happened? If you're a Gen Z, you get into the job market, and guess what happens? You have automation take it over to where you no longer can get all these high-paying jobs that you used to be able to do. Or what happened to the well, you can always go work in construction. Yes, you can until your body gives out. That's where we're at. I have a messed up shoulder because I was working as an apprentice electrician, and I cannot afford to get it healed. I cannot afford to save it because I can't do much with it. I can do my push-ups and everything like that, but there is heavy amount of pain I'm through, simply because we're in a society to where I was making $70,000 a year, yet most of my money went to taxes, rent, car. People are like, well, that's not responsible. I was a single person. I still am a single person, a single income male, which means I get taxed higher, which means my insurance premiums are higher, which means my health insurance is higher, which means my everything for me to exist is at a higher cost than it would be for someone that's an older gentleman. Because, for example, if you're on if you're getting social benefits from the government, you don't spend as much. There's government programs for seniors and everything like that give them more benefits as far as healthcare and everything like that. I can't afford the same privileges, but this is why my generation is absolutely fed up with our system. We get all these boomers. Well, I used to work 2 jobs and I busted my butt. All it afforded me was a house, a family, a happy life, and I was able to afford vacations to Europe. I was able to do this just because I worked hard. If I worked hard, all I get is a bum shoulder and I can afford a thing. I have no pension. I have nothing that will give me future benefit, and I have nothing that can actually provide and sustain me past my I can't grow. I can't have a family. I can't afford this. And people say, well, you're a doomer. I'm not a doomer. This is the economic situation that we're currently in. We're $36 trillion in debt. They tax us in order to pay their debts, right? We get higher tax. And they do it through like social expansions. They do it through like Medicare. They do it through things. They push these things that they say is beneficial to things, but I can't qualify for Medicare. I make too much money. I didn't get fired from my job, so I don't get paid because I'm unemployed. It's incentivized for you to do wrong things in our government in order for you to benefit from. And this is what people just can't comprehend. Their heads, they can't get it around. They just believe that our government's doing what's best for us, not realizing that our government is in bed with these major corporations. They bailed out these banks, and those banks bought all these houses. In order, what happened? Our housing, our income taxes, our property taxes increased, and the only benefit from that was the only people who benefit from the market crash are people who were wealthy, and people who were poor couldn't benefit. And you can't get a tax, you can't get a loan, you can't qualify for a house unless you make a certain amount of income. For me to be able to afford, I would have to prove $170,000 worth of income. I was making $80,000 a year. Now you can say you can put $20,000 down and you should be good. Do you know how long it takes for us to save $20,000 with all these benefits, that all this money that's being taken away from us before we even get our paycheck? Just the federal tax, just the Medicare, just the basics, state tax, property tax. We cannot save. People are like, well, all you got to do is invest. How can I invest when $48,000 of my income goes to things that are necessary for me to survive? We cannot invest as a generation. There's a reason why the age of people who buy homes has increased from like 25 to 35 in the last 20 years, is because younger people were taken out of the housing market and we cannot start families. People are like, well, you can always do that. There's the only people that can really do it is people who have a strong family support already behind them. Single people who live by themselves in a city. will always struggle because their income and their wages did not keep up with overall markets. And because everything's gotten 300, 400% more expensive as far as the cost of living, every dollar that we have essentially goes for us to survive. And people that are make under 21,000, they're not incentivized to go make more. They're not incentivized because they will lose all the SNAP benefits. They will lose their housing. They wouldn't be able to afford the same lifestyle they currently are. People who make under $21,000 are often more wealthy as far as goods wealthy. And this is another thing. They're incentivized to buy. They cannot save money because if they save so much money, they get taken off the food stamps. So if you're on food stamps, if you're on Section 8, for example, if you make more money, if you start saving your money, guess what will happen? You will get taken off it and you will no longer be afforded those privileges. And that's where we're at. We're in a system that's literally designed to eat itself.
To minimize taxes.
They will leave the United States.
This billionaire once told me that if New York's taxes go up, rich people will just leave.
You haven't left.
Let them leave. Let them go to all these other nations. Let them go to Swiss. And guess what will happen? United States will be okay. People don't understand that we're not always reliant on these big big corporations. Big corporations were empowered by the government in 1970s in order to control the markets. It's not the other way around. People and societies have existed. What will happen if all the hospitals go down in a small town? A small town doctor will go in and now you'll have a small down doctor who does all the visits and everything like that. People evolve and people know how to survive. That's what we're about.
I haven't left yet.
Are you going to leave?
Big story if I leave, I guess. If I leave New York, that's a big story.
He did eventually leave.
The rich people are going to leave, and other people are going to leave. You're going to end up with lots of people that don't produce, and then that's the spiral.
That's the end goal. People are like, well, you need people that produce. It's only in the benefit of corporations. These people are not benefiting for themselves. Their economies are no longer localized how they used to be in the before 1970s. Their money isn't going back into their local economies. It's going into a major corporation that all it does invest in itself and doesn't invest back into local communities. We are getting sucked dry and we are losing all of our rights. We are losing all of our freedoms. We are losing everything. We are getting taxed beyond what we can afford. We are forced into debt. Most people if they make $50,000, they have to go into debt. And people blame, well, that's his fault. He didn't save. You can try to save from when you're 18 until you're 20, but your income will be so low that you will likely not be able to afford many things. And in order for you to survive, we have to spend. And that's one of the big sayings, right? You got to spend money to make money. What if you don't have money in the first place? Does that mean you just don't make money and you just become indentured servitude? Is that what we're looking for? Because that's what our society has become.
That's the end.
It's why Europe axed its wealth taxes. Millionaires just left. Even if you don't like rich people, losing them means losing tax revenue and jobs.
Okay, I'll take it. I will go to my local farmers market if they I'll make you a deal. If all these laws that were passed by these corporations lobbied, such as EPA laws and everything like that, if all these laws were removed and then these big corporations left, I would allow them. Because you know what will happen? Small towns will start growing again. You'll have more markets. You'll have more ability to actually produce yourself. And that's what Republicans try to push, right? Self-reliance and everything. But that's a lie. The way the conservatives, true conservatives, are not pro-corporatism. They're not pro-corporate expansion. They're not pro-government subsidies. They are pro-independence. They are pro-individuals having the ability to earn themselves. And that means that if these companies leave and there is, all it will create is small market competition. Smaller shops will open up again. Smaller industries will pop all over the United States. And guess what? The economy would recover.
In America, it's even easier to leave your city or state. Millions have already done that, fleeing places like California, New York, and Illinois. Mamdani sometimes knows this.
We are talking about our tax base growing smaller and smaller each day, with New Yorkers leaving.
Everybody's going to check out a Dodge while that guy's around.
This is controlled competition. Both of these companies preach for the same thing. One of them preaches for corporate control. The other one preaches for government control. Both of these things are bad.
It's crazy. It's not like this is a new idea. Does Mamdani even know that his state already tried high taxes on the rich? They didn't work.
We projected that we'd get $4 billion, and we actually got well short of it.
Maryland tried it too.
It was supposed to bring in $106 million.
That's right.
What happened?
They lost $257 million. Surprise.
Surprise! We control the competition. We give money. We choose who wins, who loses. As far as we give incentives to major corporations in order for them to make a local economy uncompetitive. Of course, it's not a surprise because both parties are the same.
Well, I'm surprised.
Nobody should be surprised. They're out of here. These people weren't stupid.
Do Mamdani's supporters think this time will be different? In my next video, I'll cover more bad ideas from the socialists. Just economic policy. I'll skip things like defunding the police, globalize the intifada, and Mamdani's lack of experience.
Horrible ideas. Defunding the police is a horrible, horrible idea. However, giving too much funds to the police is also, and incentivizing the police to make revenue from the taxpayers based on laws such as speeding laws and everything like that, are also very, very much anti-people.
The socialist economic proposals, like his $30 minimum wage, are bad enough. To make sure you get our next video, subscribe and hit the notification.
And the thing about the minimum wage, that's not going to do a thing. If you raise the minimum wage, what will happen is you'll just go into a higher tax bracket. And guess what? You will just pay higher taxes and you'll still remain in the same financial position that you were before. It's a lie. It's like I said, this is propaganda. Let's read some of these comments here. And it's going to be obviously all people that don't understand what really the main issues are, and they'll say, oh, socialism's so bad, socialism, when they don't realize that there is corporate socialism that is in place in the United States that literally benefits only the corporations and does not benefit the people. So we either have no government subsidies and we say, hey, we're not going to be socialist, and we take away government abilities to choose who wins, who loses in the free market, or we go full socialist, right? Those are the two options they give you. They don't give you the options of, how about we just cut our government taxes? How about we input things such as, for example, if a company breaks antitrust laws, how about we, instead of just give them a financial fee, how about we make them sell the property in a public auction, for example? Let's say Apple, or let's say an American company breaks antitrust laws such as Microsoft, which I think they're already doing. Why don't we just have them sell off their assets in the value of fees? Well, because that's the only way that these companies would actually lose power. If they are forced to sell to the public, and it has to be done in the public space. It cannot be government forfeiture, because then that would just give government more control. If it has to be sold in public auction, guess what? That will just create more competition, and it'll actually have more results as far as how these companies operate. They will be more likely to follow laws, and they will more likely try to avoid any things that may compromise their image. So let's see. The mouse dies in the trap because it doesn't understand why the cheese is free. Socialism. Guess what? You are in that status. You are the mouse right now. You just defend you not capitalist. You defend a corporatism movement that literally robs you. Look at the medical field. They charge us more than 10 times the amount for our medicine, even though we have paid for most of their ability to create and exist. We funded those hospitals. We funded the research. We funded this medical institutions, yet they charge us 10 times more than they would sell to a poorer nation or a nation that is elsewhere. That is price gouging. That is the laws and things they do, and it is disgusting. I remember when America knew that communism was a bad thing. All I say, billionaires instead of millionaires, because this is literally just people that cannot comprehend the most basic status of where we're at. They're ignorant as far as how our tax system is placed, and why people are turning to socialist. If you have too much government spending, choosing, and winners, people are likely going to be disruptive and they would want to change the government, and the only option they are given is socialism, which further works into government control. This is just the reality we live in. Gen Z, I think we're cooked. I'm terrified of the time when the Gen Z inherits all the property from the boomers, and when that happens, all is going to happen is another market crash, and all is going to happen is because all these Gen Z kids and all these millennials don't have high paying jobs. They're not going to be able to afford a lot of these properties, and they're going to end up forcing to sell to these major corporations, and it'll just give further control to BlackRock. They'll own the cities. They'll own all the markets. What are we going to do then? Well, we'll have to work for them. That's the only option we will have. Or we just do as we do now, and we don't have kids. We just exist, and we'll remain depressed. I'm hoping that my generation opens its eyes and focuses on real issues that may change and may push our ability to cause major restructure of our system. Otherwise, we will all become essentially indentured servants. We're not going to be able to be independent. We're not going to be able to have families. We're not going to be able to have this unless we're under government or under a big corporation. And that's the reality we're facing. That's why this generation is so depressed, and that's why they're just checking out of this whole system. It's because they see it. They may not understand why this is happening. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm trying to explain. It's because this whole system is designed to take away. They like socialism because they didn't study it. They didn't read books, and most importantly, they didn't live in it. I was born and raised in the USSR, socialist paradise, and I thoroughly and wholeheartedly hate it due to its total failure and misery brought upon people when it was tired. Okay, you can say that USSR failed, but United States spent $9 billion or $7 billion to fund Mujahideen, who fought against the Soviets. They put economic sanctions on a nation that post World War II lost about $200 billion worth of equipment, manpower, and everything like that, whose entire industry was destroyed and everything like that. And then post World War II in 1945, 1946, the Marshall Plan, everything like that took effect to where the Western corporatism kind of took over. If you want to have a really good example of, for example, let me go to X. No. Let me see. Let me see this. I'm going to show you an example real quick of what people. CIA coup. Let's see, and what it did, it was it created national status of oil. So the British and the United States controlled Iran's oil production. Guatemala, let's see, was United Fruit Company's land. So Guatemala was turning into wanting to take away from these corporations. The United States invaded them. If you knew how many people died in these things, this isn't just uncommon. This is a very, very common thing that happens in the United States. So they feared these companies becoming nationalized to where they can no longer have private businesses that control these countries essentially through economical means, and they create a dependency on the United States government. This happens over and over again in history. This happens to us. The problem is they stopped doing this to other nations. They started doing to its citizens. And that's where we're at. If you guys do watch this video, please share your thoughts on it. I'm gonna end it here before I get too mad. I'm already frustrated, and hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. I'm not a socialist by any means. I don't support these. I don't support these governments. But if you look at the list of these people and their economic repercussions, you look at it, these nations, all of these nations have been directly affected by what's been happening all over the world and how the United States economic policy was, as far as how they expanded. And you talk about, Soviet Union. United States actively fought against the Soviet Union economically and media control. And they're like, oh, look at what the Soviets did in Hungary. There was 3 million people dead in Soviet occupation of Hungary. There was over 100 million people dead in I believe it was Guatemala. So you blame those deaths on socialism, yet you don't blame the deaths in Guatemala, Iran, Brazil, Chile, Indonesia, DRC, Greece. You don't blame it on capitalism because you're not taught proper things, because you only see one side of the things. That's where we're at. I hope you guys have a great day. Clown for Prez out, and hopefully we can inflict change here at some time.